everyone, and welcome Manny Chirico. Manny Chirico is the CEO of PVH, the world's largest dress shirt maker, and parent company of global brands such as Calvin Klein and Tommy Hilfiger, 38,000 associates and staff in, 40 countries?
Yes.
And for the climate change activists and researchers here in the room, I can already tell by now you would say, okay, problem, big challenges. And that is true, and that is what I have been thinking when I first heard of PVH and started studying the climate policies of other major players in the industry. As a journalist in the past, I've been running campaigns on the issue of climate change. And now that I'm president of Condé Nast International, looking at our own substantial climate change challenges and carbon footprints in different areas, I've become more appreciative of the complexities involved, and I think it will be worth your time hearing more from Manny how he and his teams around the world are tackling the issue. Manny, before we start with the details, which are interesting, you became CEO, in 2006?
Yes.
How has your view and your gut feeling changed when you hear the word climate change today compared to back then?
Sure. I guess first of all, in 2006, I became CEO. It was a bit of a troubled situation when I walked in. So top of my agenda was not climate change. And I think if you think back 14 years, I don't know that in 2006 I would have been able to define what climate change really meant and the issues that we're facing today that I don't think were as well understood back in that day. So that's been a major change, and it's become front and center with our consumers as an issue, and it's become front and center, even more importantly, with our 38,000 associates around the world.
How so? How is it becoming an issue with your staff?
Well, I remember a town hall meeting, which was just about as big as this. I was in New York. We had about 1,500 people in attendance, and I was taking questions and answers. And one of the questions that came up, and I was probably the CEO for about a year, and we were talking about the business and what was going on. But one of the questions that came up is, what are we doing about the environment? And my poor answer at the time was, well, listen, we're an apparel company. We can't solve the problems of the world. We need to focus on our issues. For us, the big issue is human rights around the world and factory conditions, focusing on safety for the supply chain. And that was a little quiet, and got back to my office, and I must have had 300 emails from associates telling me why I was wrong and why we needed to take more of a leadership position. And for me, that was a lesson, and starting pretty quickly right after that, it became a focal point for us.
Did you reply to any of these emails?
I sent a blanket email out to the organization saying, sorry, and that we would come back with an action plan that did address the issues. And we started slowly, like I think most. We focused on internal, what we can do in our own facilities, what we could do from a recycling, what we could do from water usage, and some of the energy usage, and cutting down our own carbon footprint. But what we realized was where the real benefit we could add would be the supply chain, and the million lives we impact within that supply chain, and the impact we have on the environment there.
Let's go into the details of some of that. You have just announced, your company has announced a global campaign, a project with not just one target, but 15 projects, each with their own metric. Mm-hmm. You will report regularly about how they progress. One that impressed me a lot is the target of taking your 3 best-selling products across different segments and making them circular, i.e. not just recyclable in the sense of downcycling, but upcycling. And that by 2025, that's not a lot of time. How are you going to do that?
Well, that's a great question. It's, I think first and foremost, I think it focuses on the original make of the goods and the raw material use, particularly cotton in our industry, and how we source that product. And what's key in that area for us to really have cradle-to-cradle circularity is to have traceability within the supply chain. And that is going to require investment. That's going to require technological advances. We're working with a number of companies to really focus first on cotton, since it's such a way where organic cotton can really be identified in the product, as opposed to today, what you have to do is segregate the cotton throughout the supply chain process, manufacturing process, that organic cotton. It increases the cost of the goods, and it's not the most efficient way. If we can take it from the field and through blockchain technology, build it into the product, we would be able to then have the traceability back. So we're making investments in that area with a number of our suppliers to do that. And the goal is, one of the categories is dress shirts. When a man is finished using his dress shirts and looking to buy another, he'd bring back the original Calvin Klein dress shirt to us. We'd be able to take that product that's 100% recyclable, put it back into our supply chain, and use it to make the next dress shirt. So to take the waste out of the overall system. That's our goal. That's the simplistic model we're trying to build against, and I think it's a good target. The three categories we're focused on: men's dress shirts, jeans, and men's underwear, which we're a leader with Calvin Klein and some of our other brands.
I think there's a parallel between the media business and your industry, which is when you and I both entered this industry, it was a different world. And typically you made a career as someone who really understood the mechanics of what was a proven and mature business. And you had to be a great communicator and a great systems optimizer. Mm-hmm. And now both of us are expected to learn in public to reinvent itself, reinvent what a product is, what a client is. And also the world politically has changed dramatically. How has your leadership style changed now that you have to learn so much more and inevitably make so many more mistakes?
So, look, our industry is going through transformation. I think one of the few industries that probably is going through more transformation change is probably your industry, the publishing industry, the media and how it's disseminated. But our industry, the distribution channels are completely changing. Data is becoming the key currency, and digitization of the data, be it on the front end from a marketing point of view, is critical, but also the opportunity and value creation, profit creation that could come of the digitization of the supply chain has huge impacts. It could make us more efficient, cutting the lead times significantly, and by cutting those lead times, having better information to make better decisions, we'd be much more efficient. We have a less of a environmental impact on the planet. From the point of view, we'd be making less goods in a more that the consumer wants, not creating as much excess. Our industry just creates a significant amount of excess.
And has your way of leading your company changed as a consequence of that? Has your personal style changed?
I think I guess if you go back, it's almost 15 years as CEO. I think back in the day, the old days, there was such a thing as the imperial CEO, and the CEO walked in and everybody jumped and everybody moved, and if you said, we're going to do this, the thought was everybody's going to move. Today, I think, if you want to be effective, you almost have to turn the pyramid upside down.
How?
I think.
What does that mean?
I think our employees, our associates that are closest to the consumer, tend to be on the bottom of the hierarchy in this, and they are the most important contact to the consumer. And the messages, as the information that comes from them really drives the business. And that affects us on the front end from a sales and a consumer point of view. And on the back end, the best answers come from those associates that are on the firing line dealing day to day with some of these issues. So that my style, I think, over time has changed to be more collaborative and consensus building.
There's a dilemma I think we're facing. One is everybody on the policy side wants to be the founder of, the mother of, the father of a principle, a campaign. and so forth. And we simply don't have time for that, for everyone being the founder of something. It would be better if we collaborate more. On the corporate side, especially in American corporate culture, there was a bias towards very strong, assertive leaders, female and male. And now I again think we can only tackle some of these challenges in time if we collaborate a lot more, if we share information more, at the risk of hurting ourselves in the short term. And that requires a different personality, don't you think?
Yes, and not necessarily one that is aligned with the public company quarterly chase for earnings.
Exactly.
So setting targets and goals that are more long-term and bringing your shareholder base along is critical in order to be successful with some of these long-term projects that require a significant investment upfront.
Did you, and I say this with the preface that I'm hugely impressed by this conference, how it has developed. I was just joking with Eva earlier that this is a 10-year overnight success. Unbelievable, really inspiring. And yet when I look at some of my own challenges as the president of Condé Nast International and then look at the agenda, I wonder, where is policy? Where is policy? Are we really thinking we can do this through industry collaboration primarily?
Well, I think
what is your take on policy and what do you expect from governments or hope for?
I've got very low expectations when it comes to governments.
Well, you do operate in 40 countries. There are 40 governments.
Yes,
there's China,
and
there's the European Union.
I think unfortunately the pendulum swings too far left and right and around policy. And I think if you're going to be a long-term leader, you've got to try to get that noise out of the equation. I'd like to make a point on collaboration, industry collaboration. Our industry, fragmented industry, relatively speaking, highly competitive. Well, look, we try to kill each other each day. It's the nature of the beast. It's competitive, and it needs to stay competitive. But there is a huge benefit if we're going to compete. It would be good to compete on the same playing field. Because today, I think what we have is, I think there's a number, I don't want to characterize as few, there's a number of leaders and companies that are leading and playing on a playing field which trying to make advancements and move this the environmental sustainable issues forward, moving the factory safety and compliance issues forward. And then there's another group of competitors that are along for the ride and not taking a leadership position and not making these same investments and are not necessarily playing by the same rules. The more we can have transparency and a focus on not just the financial results, because every quarter we have to deal with that, and everyone reports it the same way, and your sales are up, your sales are down, your profits are up, your profits are down, and you could measure yourself against other competitors. The consumer doesn't see that. There is no good housekeeping seal of approval that says that Calvin Klein dress shirt is made in a socially responsible way, in an environmentally sustainable way, ethically sourced by a great corporate citizen. There's nothing that says that. So you have to figure out how do you deliver that message for your brands, and at the same time deliver the marketing message that's not always totally aligned or is not connected to that environmental message, that sustainability message. So for Calvin Klein, it's all about sensuality, sexuality, making that connection, that emotional connection with the consumer. So as we're doing that and spending hundreds of millions of dollars, how do we at the same time get our message across that we are a good corporate citizen, that we do source our goods ethically, that we do think about the environmental impacts that we have and looking to make improvements and changes? That's a message that has to come across, and it's a challenge because it's not as easily done when a consumer's at Macy's making a decision about Calvin Klein, Tommy Hilfiger, or one of my competitors. Do they really have the information to make that decision?
Manny, let's play an imagination game together. Imagine... No, I'm not going to... We sit in the same boat in so many ways. We're both born in the year 2009. You and I are now 10 years old, okay? And we sit here in the audience since yesterday morning and listen. And yes, we are interested in getting a hold of our parents' iPad and buying some of your sneakers and all that, but occasionally we also pick up news about the possibility of you and I, when we are 50, no longer having food, of countries having broken apart under the stress of climate change, the many different stress points. And if you would have listened these last 2 days, and now also to us, would you think we're moving fast enough?
No. I mean, let's be intellectually honest, is we have, I don't know, I'm not going to pick a percentage, 40, 50% of the world doesn't think climate change is an issue. So if you're starting with that as a baseline, how could we move fast? Because we can't seem to get consensus from a policy point of view, government by government, to really move this initiative forward. So I think that's a huge challenge. I think today, to take your example, is the consumer today, which wasn't born in 2009, was born in 1980 or whatever it was, the average consumer. That average consumer is, in our industry, apparel product. The vast majority of their decision about what product they're going to buy is driven by two key items: fashionability and price. Everything else is way down on the scale. It's way down on the scale not because people don't care, it's because people don't necessarily have the information to make an informed decision along those lines. So for me, the elephant in the room is the consumer. How do we educate them? How do we bring them along? And then how do we make them care about this issue that they may be willing to spend an extra $1 or $2 to buy an ethically sourced, environmentally sustainable product versus one that's not environmentally safe, is not made in a great factory, when there is no measurement out there that does that. The measurement they see is, that's a beautiful product, that's an ugly product. That's $29.99, that's $19.99. Those are the decisions that are driving that consumer. We have to try to change that mindset a bit.
When you look at the automotive industry, another global industry, the electric cars, at least initially, cost a lot more than the old combustion engine cars. Is it inevitable that sustainable fashion, at least initially, short-term and mid-term, costs more? And if so, who is supposed to pick up the bill? The consumer, the supplier, the label, or possibly also societies through taxes and incentives?
That's interesting. First of all, I don't subscribe to the notion that in order to be environmentally sustainable and to have the proper human rights conditions within factories, that means you can't meet your financial goals and be economic.
You just spoke about higher prices.
Yeah, but I think it's a fair point. I think the issue is, how do we level the playing field that we don't have competitors cheating, that they're not making shortcuts, that they're not going to factories that aren't paying overtime, and what we do find in the supply chain is our most efficient, environmentally sustainable suppliers are also our best suppliers. The highest quality, the least amount of defects and returns, the best prices overall, on-time delivery, those key things. So I think it's a mindset, it's a partnership between yourself and the supply base. It's not trying to take every penny out of the manufacturer's profit margins, and it's developing a trust with them to move them forward as you're going forward. So I think those are the keys as we move forward. It doesn't have to be substantially more expensive, but my point on the price was, are consumers willing to make the investment in that as we go forward?
Which is where brand also comes in so powerful.
And I think that's where brand where the brand and the message you deliver to the consumer is critical, and being able to do that in a way that makes the point is really the new measure that we're dealing with.
Manny, we have a few minutes left for questions. Any questions? Please, if there's a mic up there. First balcony. Gentleman standing.
Just
Can you
yell.
Hvad sker der nu? Hvad sker der der? What's going on there?
Can you listen? I get what you're saying, but can you narrow it down into a question to us that Manny can answer? What is the responsibility of the consumer?
I think it's a great point. I think it goes back to my point that I think the consumer decision relating to apparel has been driven by price and fashionability and design. In fairness to the consumer, I don't think it's been very opaque about who is sourcing ethically, who is sourcing environmentally in an environmentally conscious way. So the information is not clearly out there. I think one of the keys is transparency, trying to open the doors and shed the light onto this issue, and put a light on the issues that we're dealing with as an industry and some of the negative impacts the industry has and what improvements we're trying to make. The only disagreement I would have with what the gentleman raised was I recognize the consumer has a responsibility. The corporation, I think, also has a responsibility to set out clear targets and goals, just the way we set out clear targets and goals when it comes to our financial performance. So every quarter I'm measured on, did we deliver our sales? Did we deliver the profits we said we would deliver? Are our inventories in line with where we said they would be? I think in a similar way, by putting these 15 targets out here about how we're going to reduce our carbon footprint, how we're going to improve the sourcing of our product and impact the lives in factories. We've tried to have very concrete targets that over the next 3, 5, 7, 10 years that we'll achieve, and hold ourselves accountable to that and report back on those. And where we miss, explain why we missed.
Manny, will you be here for another couple hours today?
Yeah.
Great. So we have to wrap it up. But you will find Manny here in the foyer, I'm sure, of a cup of coffee. Please follow up, and you all know where to contact him. Why are you laughing? Why are you laughing? Do you know each other?
Yes.
Good. All right. So someone wants to talk with you over coffee. I'll be around as well. Thank you very much. And also, if you have any ideas and thoughts or would like to know more about what Vogue is doing around the world on this issue as an organization that is learning publicly, please contact me at any time. Thank you very much. Thank you,
My
Manny.
pleasure. Thank you.